All right. So there's a lot of names in here. It's going through a genealogy. So Steve, I don't think you need to read all the names, just maybe read the text around it. So
Sometimes that's just as hard.
yeah. So since there's a lot of genealogy in here, like we did in Ezra and everything else, then we got some questions starting off here on who you're named after, where did they come from, who else shares your family name. Anybody want to comment on that? So,
Grandfather.
okay. Yeah.
My name shared with 2 grandsons.
They wouldn't share my name with anybody.
Well, they believe me, Gary, they were reluctant to throw a Daryl in there.
Yeah.
I brought it up. I got 7 grandkids, 2 great grandkids. I'm gonna say, hey, what about Gary? You got to be kidding me.
Yeah, right.
Well, I remember. Well, yeah. This is my brother Daryl, and this is my other brother Daryl.
Yeah, right.
How about
We actually in my company, we had 2 Daryls and a Larry. When we showed up at a meeting, I said, my name's Daryl. Other guy said Daryl, and the people on the other side of the table go, well, where's Larry? And he goes, that be me. That always was funny.
Well, my middle name is Sanford, and I got that from my dad, and he got that from his dad. So,
Yeah.
I've done Ancestry.com, taken it way, way back into the 1400s. And with my family, you'll find that, in fact, that makes it difficult, is that, in the 20th and the 19th century, there wasn't many where they actually named people after somebody. But in the early years, in the old ancient times, there was people that were named in the same family over and over and over again. So, and then Carlson was with a K in the beginning, and then it was changed to C when they came to the United States. And then my mother's side was from Schaumburg, Germany, and they had a lot of names that were the same. So when you're trying to track, you have to really be careful on the documentation that you got the right grandfather and the right great grandfather in the right spot. They may be related, but they may be out of line.
Yeah, no, we went over to Crown Hill and some of my mom's sides over there, but it was hard. Like my grandfather's name was Lyman Kingsbury, but you go over into the Crown Hill, and there's so his first name was actually the last name of a lot of the family. So there were Laymans and there were Kingsburys, but he had the last name, and then they used the last names of the mother a lot of times as middle names for the son. So
they do that in Puerto Rico.
Oh,
Then you got the royal families. They pick a new name when they take their offices, which is never understood that one.
I always think of George Foreman and all his kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, George. Hey, George.
Yeah.
Hi, can I speak to George? Which one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he wanted
That's just
everybody.
Clay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who
I work with, and
Yeah.
I'm sure Chuck, you did too. You get in prison, you get a Native American. What's the beauty? You always end up saying to them, they'll give you your name, and then you'll say, well, what does that mean? And it always means something.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you were just talking about this, Gary, so I guess you answered that question. Anybody?
So
So
I'll tell you one interesting thing, just real quick. Carlson sounds pretty sweet, so that's pretty much what I had gone by forever. Actually found out my origination of family actually came from Iceland, and they were part of the group that went in and pillaged and settled in Sweden, but originally from Iceland, which I never knew.
Iceland to Sweden?
Well,
Yep.
nobody is originally from Iceland, by the way. So they went somewhere. They came from somewhere.
Well, they must not kept good any research on that. Because the final place I dropped off with them was in the early 1400s. They came to Sweden and they settled in Sweden from Iceland.
Wow.
Yeah, my claim to fame is the first Vedel that came over was a double agent. He worked for both the King of Britain and George Washington.
Hmm.
Oh,
And at the end of the war, of course, the United States didn't have any money. So he was paid in land. And so our family still owns a bunch of land in and around Floyd, Virginia. And he had 9 sons, and 4 of them were preachers and 5 of them were outlaws. And
wow.
he died a pauper living with his preacher sons because he spent most of his land to keep his outlaw sons out of prison. So it's pretty interesting.
Wow. So you're
I did Debbie's side too, and that was actually more interesting. Her line comes from, because she's actually from the east, and her line goes clear back to the Pilgrims, and she's got a relative. And then this tells me a lot about Debbie, because I found out that one of her relatives married an Indian squaw, and so I told she's part Native American now, so she never knew that.
It was
Yeah.
the high cheekbones that gave it away.
No, it's that hatchet she carries.
No, Susan's 1/8 Cherokee.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, they got a lot in common.
Yeah. Okay, Rick, this is your part.
Okay, here we go. Rebuilding the wall wasn't the end, it was the beginning. There was still work to be done. Nehemiah wanted to make sure that things would run smoothly. He wanted to make sure that things wouldn't regress. There are times to build and there are times to preserve in what has been built. Imagine how foolish it would have been if after all that work, rebuilding a wall, a tactical mistake allowed the enemy to come into the city and defeat them. Nehemiah continues to organize the delegate and make sure that every detail is attended to. He puts wise leaders in charge. He appoints leaders that he knows and trusts. He appoints leaders who fear God and are men of integrity. This is what Paul also commanded in 1 Timothy and Titus about appointing elders. He sets rules for the opening and closing of the gates and appoints guards. If one gate was left open at the wrong time, or if one spot was unguarded, all of their work may have been done for nothing. Nehemiah understood that their achievements and past victories would not guarantee that the enemy would stop trying to destroy them. He understood that his enemy would preserve. He surveyed the wall to find the weakness to fix it before. Now his enemy would survey the wall and find the weakness to attack.
Okay, so Steve, like I said, there's a lot of names in here as we go through this, but so I'm not asking you to read all of them. Just read the parts that make some sense.
When the wall had been rebuilt and I had the doors installed, the gatekeepers, singers, and Levites were appointed. Then I put my brother Hananiah in charge of Jerusalem, along with Hananiah, commander of the fortress, because he was a faithful man who feared God more than most. I said to them, do not open the gates of Jerusalem until the sun is hot, and let the doors be shut and securely fastened while the guards are on duty. Station the citizens of Jerusalem as guards, some at their posts and some at their homes. The city was large and spacious, but there were few people in it, and no houses had been built yet. Then my God put into my mind to assemble the nobles, the officials, and the people to be registered by genealogy. I found the genealogical record of those who came back first, and I found the following written in it. These are the people of the province who went up among the captive exiles deported by King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. Each of them returned to Jerusalem and Judah, to his own town. They came with Zerubbabel and his friends.
Uh-oh.
The number of
Wow.
Israelite men included Perosh's descended,
Yeah, and then
and here's a bunch of people with a bunch of numbers.
The
Wow.
whole gang.
yeah,
Okay.
Wow.
and
Oh, okay. You got them bolded. Thanks. The priests, the Levites, and the singers, and the gatekeepers.
uh,
The temple servants,
yeah,
the descendants of Solomon's servants. The following are those who came from Tel Melah, Tel Harasha, Cherub, Adon, and Imar, but were unable to prove that their families and ancestries were Israelite. Huh. The whole combined assembly numbered 42,360.
yeah. You might want to read the
Oh, here we go. Not including their 7,000. Oh, wait a minute. I missed a whole bunch of.
yeah. Read this up here. Yeah,
Okay. Deliah's descendants, Tobiah's descendants, and Nakoda's descendants. And from the priests, the descendants of Hobiah, the descendants of Hakaz, and the descendants of Barzillai, who had taken a wife from the daughters of Barzillai and Gileadite, and was called by their name. These searched for their entries in the genealogical records, but they could not be found. So they were disqualified from the priesthood. The governor ordered them not to eat the most holy things until there was a priest who could consult with Urim and Thummim. The whole combined assembly numbered 42,360, not including their 2,337 male and female slaves, as well as their 245 male and female singers. They had 736 horses, 245 mules, 435 camels, and 6,720 donkeys. Some of the family leaders gave to the project. The governor gave 1,000 gold coins, 50 bowls, and 530 priestly garments to the treasury. Some of the family leaders gave 20,000 gold coins and 2,200 silver minions to the treasury for the project. The rest of the people gave 20,000 gold coins, 2,000 silver minas, and 67 priestly garments. So the priests, Levites, gatekeepers, temple singers, some of the people, temple servants, and all Israelites settled in their towns.
now actually, there's one more a part of a verse that's part of chapter 7, but it reads right into chapter 8. So we'll include that next week. But I thought that was a kind of a strange break why they didn't just use a complete sentence or just include it. Excuse me. With chapter 8.
So they did the same kind of stuff when they were building the temple, right? Didn't they give an account like this when the temple was being built?
yeah, they did, and it's a very similar to the account in Ezra. Also, and the Urim and the Thummim are actually jewels off the priest. What was that called? With the 12 gems on it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I forget too. It's kind of like a vest plate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do have a definition spelled out in later on in the questions or answers. All right. So any other initial comments or thoughts?
Well, when they were given an accounting of all those numbers of everything, that had to be on a given day, obviously.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
that would change daily.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I do have, I'm not sure where I put it, but I think I have some questions on why they included these genealogies and that type of thing. We'll talk about that when that question comes up. So
You know, it struck me as, you know, they talk about the singers. They obviously needed a choir.
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. Well, a lot of the Psalms it talks about the singers or whatever, I think, in there or during their services. So what do you imagine are Nehemiah's feelings at this point in time? After all he's been through, the wall has been built, and he set the doors in place, yet there was still so much to do. So this is just asking what you think he's feeling at this point, or
Well, his job isn't done, and now he's got to orient the organization. I mean, you see that organization of the people, and that's like a church. It's the organization of the church itself. You know, it'd been 140, I think, 1 year, something like that. Some of these people didn't carry the same strength in the beliefs of God and Jesus, well, and God, I should say,
Yeah.
at this point. So they had to reorient these people back to that.
Well, you have to build a community, right? You're going to
Yeah.
need people that are, goods and
Yeah.
services and all that good stuff if you're building a city, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and again, we always kind of compare parallel. If you walk up to a young person today and start talking about your knowledge and speak that way to them, they're going to go, what is he talking about? And that's kind of where they were at with some of their people inside the temple itself. They had really not been part of it for a long time.
This is interesting because it makes me think of, churches that get together and meet in a home, and then they grow, and then they decide they have to build a building, and then they do a bunch of work to build a building, and then what is different then after they have a building versus when they were meeting in someone's home. Some of us were involved with building Christ Church in Zionsville, that building, but the church as people existed before that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was, to me, it was just kind of curious as I was looking that his brother's name was Hananiah, and along with Hananiah, adding the AH. So I don't know whether I guess we'd have to look at the Hebrew to see if that was kind of like the adding of the grace, like it was Abram or what was he before he was Abraham?
Abram, right?
Abram. So yeah. So then it became Abraham, and I thought the Hebrew letter was like that was added to make it Abraham was like the letter for grace. So I don't know whether that's the case. I didn't look at these spelled out in Hebrew. So
First person, second person, and third person would it be Hananiah's?
Mhm.
yeah. So
I noticed there was no elections.
yeah,
Yeah.
These people were appointed.
Yeah.
Once you make sense of all this, then you let me know. The Hananiah's.
Yeah.
No, that point you made, Steve, though, is a good one, that they didn't hold elections.
Right.
He selected people he trusted.
Yeah.
And I would think that would bring some animus from the other people that didn't get selected.
Yep.
And
Yep.
the people that couldn't prove their lineage and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll write your name down in the appendix.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably that. Couldn't find their credentials or something. It just reminded me. We just had to re-up our TSA clearance. So fortunately, we had all the documents. Oh, and I actually I can do it online. So.
Wow.
So what did Nehemiah do after the wall had been finished? Well,
Well, he started putting in the infrastructure, right?
yeah,
All the leaders.
First he put on doors
Oh, yeah.
and gates.
I thought that was interesting too, that he didn't consider the doors part of finishing the wall.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah.
That's like when you order a new shower in your house, they put the shower up and I said, where are the doors? Oh, that's extra.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know you wanted that.
Yeah, what the heck? You think it's all part of the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you've ever seen these doors, I don't know how you'd finish a door in 52 days. These
Right.
things are huge.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, see, did that include the doors? I don't know. Sorry, I'm trying to keep my hand off the mouse. So How did he start to take them forward from pre-wall life to post-wall life?
Well, he
Six.
appointed leaders, gave them roles in the service of the city rather than the building of the city.
They had standing rules with how, you look at the gates, they weren't just gates, it's when were the gates gonna be open, when were they gonna be closed? There was a lot of infrastructure bylaws that went along with the gates themselves.
Yeah. Okay. What type of people did he put in charge? And why is this important? And I think actually we had some comments on this earlier.
Well, people that he
Faithfulness.
trusted, but also people that he could track their lineage, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah,
Faithful.
yeah.
No double agents, Greg.
Yeah.
There you
Inside
go.
Inside the wall. None of the
No
keys.
Veddles.
Yep. Yep.
What is the point of Nehemiah's plans in verse 3? Do not open the gates of Jerusalem till the sun is hot, and let the doors be shut and securely fastened while the guards are on duty. Station the citizens of Jerusalem as a guard, some at their post and some at their homes.
Safety.
Yeah.
I read a commentary on that it was basically that a lot of times if you open them early in the morning, you're more likely to be attacked. If you open them up in the morning early, and if you're at the heat of the day, which it says that's what it was, it's more unlikely that you'd be attacked during the heat of the day.
Mhm.
Yeah, not everybody. Your enemies didn't have their sunscreen and everything else. Come early in the morning.
So it's not as simple as you had to wait for the heat to dry out the door so you could get it open.
Oh no, that'd probably be another thing too. Yeah. What problems face the newly fortified city?
No homes.
No homes. And I think most of the people, generally the people were farmers or sheep herders or something, so they wouldn't necessarily have a place in like downtown.
Right.
So
All around the cheapskate.
It's a long walk to the bars from the farm.
yeah. What did Nehemiah plan to do in verse 5? What we've talked about.
Get
Registered
everybody's
people.
genealogy.
Yeah.
I wonder if he was doing that because he had a record of where people's homes were, and he wanted to make sure they got their property back.
Yeah, and actually that I think one of the commentaries did mention that is that was a lot of these Jews, the Jews families had land around Jerusalem and Israel prior to being taken over, 140 years ago, whatever it was, and shipped out into exile. So that's part of the reason he did go through the genealogy and see what their history was, because they must have had some register of this family. The novices had this plot of land historically, and the rights were over here. So I don't know. What can we what leadership characteristics can we learn from Nehemiah thus far in chapter 7?
I'm always amazed that he has really, if you think about his organizational skills and his plan, he's always got it pretty well, I mean, thought out. Maybe he laid awake at night and did this, but I don't know. He's organized.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Well,
think that,
I think it's interesting that, verse 5 there, then my God put it into my mind,
yeah,
assembled the nobles.
Yeah.
yeah, and that might be more, although it doesn't say it. It could be the Holy Spirit.
Well, he's good to recognize that there are, if you're earlier, you read where the nobles really didn't work. They watched, but they didn't work. And he was careful to line up those people by, who's important down nobles, officials, and then who by genealogy fits into that line of the status ladder.
Yeah. So one of the commentators said that we should be alert and aware. We should understand our weaknesses and take appropriate measures to protect ourselves from temptation in those areas. Applying that more to our life, our Christian walk, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't have any questions on this part, so
What?
I could have asked some specifics like
How many descendants of so and so?
yeah, so
Well, yeah, but I think the conversation might be different if we were Jewish and we were looking at all these names.
Right.
It would be much more familiar, and probably in some cases people track and trace all the way back to some of these folks.
right.
Just think of all the gossip that sits there with all those people. If that was names of people at our church, I'm sure that everybody go, oh, did you hear about Aden? Oh no. Well, this is what Aden told me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so these numbers are all men, right? Doesn't include the families, is that right?
Yeah, that'd be typically right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Dave, no questions here. Well, I mean, those are left over from when I copied this over. So this is just about the Urim and the Thummim, I don't know, two untranslated Hebrew words which might mean lights and perfections. They refer to some kind of stones or tokens which the ancient high priest of Israel used for discovering the will of God. And oh yeah, you remember David asked for the ephod, the priest ephod, which had those stones on it.
Yeah.
And again, we don't know whether God illuminated those stones and it's kind of spelled out an answer or something. I don't know, but anyway, so the theories abound, but most guess they were something like dice or coins, which had to land upright or upside down. And according to Exodus 28:30, they were kept on the breastplate. See, I don't think they were coins, but anyway, of the high priest. They are not mentioned from the time of the breast. They're not mentioned from the time of Saul until the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, when they were used for reaccrediting returned priests. In Samuel, the Greek translation preserves what may have been lost from the Hebrew original, a mention of them in connection with Saul's effort to determine guilt in his army. That they could give answers to true and false or yes, no questions is evident from the verse. Hence, the system was akin to casting lots. Interestingly, none of the major spiritual leaders ever used them. Well, and again, I guess this commentary I copied it from is not accurate because David did use it, and the prophets used it to determine the will of God. So in the New Testament, there's no mention of them. Excuse me. Okay. So
Yeah,
anyway,
it's interesting that they would do stuff like casting lots to determine, do we stay or do we go, or do we fight, do we not fight, right?
yeah. Well, and even when they were replacing Judas, didn't they
Yeah.
cast
Yeah,
lots?
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
they did.
it's interesting.
There's a reference to something like this. Have you ever seen the movie Night in the Museum the second one, they have it. There's
Oh,
a
yeah,
god that has an ephod, and they use it to, you know, ignite the life of the animation of the reanimation of creatures in the museum. But it's interesting that they do that and they build it as described here. You know, so it's just kind of weird.
yeah. Well, a little bit of truth with a lot of fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes it seem believable. So, why couldn't some? Oh, why couldn't some of the people make connections with relatives?
There's probably many reasons for that, but
Well, they didn't have
sometimes,
computers
yeah,
back.
but sometimes you cut ties and change your name because you need to.
For safety's sake, right? Or what have you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Especially when you're attacked and your people are spread out all over the place, right?
That's why we ended up with so many Smiths.
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Why was it so important for priests to make the connection?
Well, I would assume that that's where they understood the authority, the ultimate authority to come to.
Yeah, or God's rules about priests. So, why are
Question: is Nehemiah considered a priest in this?
I don't recall him. No, I don't think he's part of Levi's.
No, I don't think so either.
So no, he was the governor, and I don't know. They made some distinction down here is that the governor gave 1,000 gold coins and 530 priestly garments to the treasury. I mean, they had a question and I didn't quite get it, so maybe you guys get it. So the governor, Nehemiah, gave 530 priestly garments, and then down here it says the rest of the people gave 67 priestly garments. So why the difference? I didn't quite get that question.
It implies he had access to them when the city went down.
We found where they were or something. Yeah. So
Well, I would assume he protected them. He
yeah,
knew, or he knew who did.
yeah, yeah. Because you remember the garments, I guess, were not so much as valuable as you remember all the not the silverware, but the goblets and everything else used in the religious thing were very sacred, and they were gold or whatever, and those were kind of moved around quite a bit by some of the pagan people that took those over. Of course, it didn't work out too good for the what was the king in Daniel that was having anyway,
Is that Nebuchadnezzar?
Yeah,
yeah, maybe it was
Yeah, I think it
yeah,
was.
yeah.
because that's got the handwriting on the wall there. So this was one commentator was talking about why are genealogies important and why is listing the people's family names and participants important? And I think we've kind of discussed about some of this, but the one thing which this one guy was talking about is actually, if you think about it, it adds some validity to the Bible as being a historical document because they're not just saying, well, this king here, this king there, or this person. They list the names, and that if for any records available, they would be able to go back and check. So I mean, it gives some validity to that, and even if you I mean, if you read some archaeological things about the Bible, for a long time they're saying, well, this place mentioned in the Bible was not real, this place was not, and then you know, many years later, more currently, I suppose, they find a place that actually existed at the spot that the Bible kind of says it does. It's just like they found Mount Sinai. What is it, in Turkey or somewhere in Egypt? But they did find there is a mountain there with the top is charred, and they found. I've seen another thing on this kind of the archaeological people I watch is that they did find what they think was the site of Sodom and Gomorrah because they found, and there's no place else in the world they've ever found these. They found balls of sulfur remnants, but anyway. But so I thought that was interesting. Why this guy was pointing out that the genealogies and things are unique to the Jewish and Christian Bible, I guess, is that this just it adds validity to it, and that these were real people, real times, real places. So.
Yeah, I never knew that Great Balls of Fire was a Jewish song.
Yeah, it's a historical one. It's been around for a long time.
Jerry Hiram Lee Lewis.
Let's see. I had a couple questions. Let's see. Yeah, I was struggling last night, so let me
You know,
read.
without heritage, I just wanted to I was thinking about it even for what it's a big money maker today for people to do ancestry.com and do their DNA. And if you think about not knowing your genealogy or not knowing where you're at, it presents kind of a vacuum in your life. This not only substantiates what you've talked about, Dwight, but also substantiates you and who you are and where you came from and what were the beliefs of your family and genealogy and how it was handed down. And in some cases, I almost personally feel guilty about how well I have done to hand down that. And it was important in the Bible throughout both Old and New Testament, where there is a constant look in the rearview mirror as to where they came from.
Yeah, and I think another thing about, I mean, the practical thing about that too is if you know somewhat of your family's history, you know something about the health and whether you're predisposed to certain diseases or cancers
Yeah.
or that type of thing. So and I think this do have a comment on that. So our family heritage should help us learn and grow because of ancestors' mistakes or successes. To not pay attention to history is to repeat it. And many times we react to our families rather than working through those relationships. When we do this, we don't learn very much. Since Israel was rejected by God and sent into captivity, the people who came back from Babylon might want to forget their relatives. In doing so, they might also fall into the same traps as their families fell into that brought judgment upon them. Throughout Scripture, this forgetting is a sin which God often challenges. If we are honest, we should have some good memories from our families as well as bad memories. And I think this relates to something we talked about uh, at another time too, is about, you know, if you don't remember your history, you don't have things that remind you of the history of your country or your people, both the good and bad, you're going to tend to repeat them if you don't know what I mean, I can't I recall now sometimes we know about how bad communism or socialism is, but we've done that in two different ways. One, we got too excited about it, or we're starting to persecute people that might have been socialists. Remember whatever that guy was that was persecuted. But you also then we need to look at the other countries that have adopted Marxism and socialism, those types of things, and what's happened to them. It's not been a a great utopia that everybody's equal, that they thought. Think of Animal Farm, I guess, too. But so anyway, so the importance of family history is and sharing those stories in within the family, I think, is what this is talking about. As believers, it's not enough to know that we are citizens of the holy city of God, the promised land of heaven. Although we may be saved, the battle is not over. Once we have trusted Christ and become citizens of heaven, we still remain citizens of this earth. Our citizenship is in both heaven and earth. Heaven is our future residence, already bought and paid for, and we are guaranteed the privilege of living in heaven once we leave this earth. But until that day, our citizenship on earth continues to expose us to the corruption of the world. In truth, as long as we live in this corruptible world, we will be attacked by enemy forces. Temptation will confront us, seducing us into immoral, lawless, and violent behavior. Furthermore, all kinds of trials, hardships, and sufferings will face us. So these pioneers and ancestors of faith set a dynamic example for us. Just as they believed and acted in faith, we too must believe in the Lord and trust Him to fulfill His promises. Only those who believe are accepted by God. Any other thoughts on the passage?
Have we talked about what Nehemiah, the name, means?
I don't know. You got it there, I guess.
Yeah, Yahweh has comforted.
Good.
Appropriate for this chapter, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was just a normal person, not a priest or a prophet.
So I think it's also an example. I think part of what some of this commentary was saying, I didn't pull it out right, but as long as, Jesus said, even after you accept Him and we believe and we're, again, have put a wall around us, He always talks about guarding your heart. And that's kind of like putting the gates up and having the somebody stand at the threshold. So.
It's also a good example of you don't have to be a priest or a prophet to be a spiritual leader of people.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Right?
Yep. And he definitely was. Okay, so yeah, we finished a little bit early, but like I said, I was having trouble on questions on all those lists. I could have pulled out some. I mean, it looks like there was over 50,000 men, with the people that were named, the groups that were named, plus the slaves, and then that doesn't include the women and children. So any other things on the prayers? Any updates, additions?
Yeah, Anna's struggling a little bit. She's reported this week that she's become clumsy, and she's got her worried. She is approaching her 6-month window for her next Ocrevus shot, so we're trying to get that moved up in hopes that would help a little bit. So if you could keep her in your prayers for healing, that would be helpful. Much appreciated.
Did she ever get that appointment moved up?
No, we're still on a waiting list. So that appointment is November 2nd.
Hey, Greg, thanks for sharing your visit with Darcy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done that a few times with folks that are getting ready to leave this world. It was a difficult one. It was really tough.
Yeah.
He was he was hard to understand. And it wasn't because he was confused. His mind is sharp. It was just the Parkinson's makes it difficult. And
Yep.
he, he was basically giving a lament of his life, that he was leaving his kids. And um, it was hard. It was hard done.
Definitely. How's Debbie doing, Gary?
Going back in, they think that she's got a fracture somewhere, but she's just having a really tough time sitting. So we have a desk now, so she right those where you stand and it comes raises up. So she's doing that, but I think we take so much for granted. I know I do. But then, you get an injury on the tailbone, and then you begin to realize how much you sit on that tailbone, and it's painful. So she's, all in all, he's doing pretty well, but it's limiting of the things we can do that we like to do. Going out to eat, the chairs usually aren't the best in the West to sit
Right.
on.
Yeah.
So we probably, and we love to go out. That's what we always did. So that's kind of been limiting. So, but I'm thankful. I kind of am where you're at, Dwight, when you're saying, the Satan is trying every way he can to, muster up some trouble, because we're so involved with Christ every day with what we're doing as we're retired. And sometimes I think, man, he is trying every way to keep you from doing these things.
Yeah, I know that's just what we're struggling with. I mean, he can't kill us, but he can try and rob us of the joy of our salvation. Basically, that's what he's trying to do when he brings all these difficulties to us. I mean, like I said, it's our main thing is just those repairs, that window, and our one Rachel's and Greg's furnace issue, and then even Susan took Abby's car over just to get an oil change, and they ended up having to do the brakes. So because
Yeah.
so I mean, it's just and then we plan for this. Typically every year we don't get they don't get our POs out, and I've only gotten 2 of them out of 10. So I don't know why they're so slow in coming out. So we got all those things. It just kind of a little bit. It's not life threatening, but it just makes it a little bit more difficult in coping, I guess, as you go through life. So
Yeah. Well, I'm sure some of what you're talking about is I get very frustrated with, and I'm sure Greg, you went through this too, is that the doctor says, well, we need to do this and do that before you get to do that. And you need to get an approval from the insurance company. So the insurance company, in fact, it was just happened yesterday with one of the medications Debbie's on for arthritis. Do you really need this? Well, how long have you been taking that? I mean, for a long time. But the insurance companies really govern your medical path you're on.
that's so true. That's so true. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but there's a new series out. I think it's on Prime. It's called Good Omens. And I'm not sure how biblical it is, but it references scripture. And I think the second episode actually presented Job and kind of how he was it is a comedy, and it's about an angel of the devil and an angel of Satan and kind of their conversations in life. It's kind of interesting. I'm trying to determine where I sit with it, but it is it's thought provoking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. There's a lot to think about it. So
well, I look at it as part of that pendulum swinging, because there was a time where no one would write that, that
Right.
story. And,
Right.
And it would never get published
Yep.
or it never get made. So I don't know, kind of interesting.
I have to look that up. You know, it's kind of the tail wagging the dog when it comes to, if you talk to the doctors, as I know you do, they're as frustrated with it as we are.
Yeah.
You know, they spend the time, the money, and the energy of becoming a doctor, and then they have to go to somebody that has not gone through that to ask whether they can do this or do that. That's kind of
It's one of the
backwards.
one of the major reasons that Diane retired out of
Yeah,
OT, because the same thing.
yeah,
Insurance companies were making decisions and she just couldn't
Yeah.
justify it.
yeah.
And then the other thing too, I don't know, we were talking to, along the same line, we were talking to, a family friend across the street. I mean, he was, um, I'm trying to think of his name, Dr. Chua. Yeah. Oh, you know him. Yeah. But he
Yeah.
was, I don't know why that passed my, anyway, but he was talking to Susan at one point, and we've noticed this too, is that the none of the younger doctors don't, they don't come in, they don't touch you, they don't.